Okay, today is May 22nd. We're in the middle of COVID-19. My name is Adam Schneider. I'm with HomeVestors, and I'm going to be interviewing Greg Langjahr, who's with HomeVestors. I'm in Raleigh. He's in Columbia, South Carolina. And the reason we're doing this is Greg's got a really cool story to tell. And there's a lot of people who are interested in being real estate investors, and they like to hear how others have sort of made the journey. And Greg was kind enough to be willing to share his story. So, Greg, you and I met in 2013 or 14, I think.
I think it was 2013, yeah.
2013, great, fantastic. So, go ahead. Let's just start with what you were doing before HomeVestors in your career, and then how you decided to make a change and how that all looked.
Sure. So it's before HomeVestors, I was not in real estate full time. So my background is actually in engineering, and I was working in a manufacturing company as as a manufacturing manager, and I was interested in rental properties. Really, is how my interest in real estate got started. So I had bought a duplex and really was doing well with that. I had owned it for maybe 5 or 6 years. And then I decided, look, I think this is a good long-term thing. I want to buy more rentals. So met with a local realtor and, looked at a bunch of houses on MLS and probably honestly did that for a couple of years. I wasn't obviously really aggressive with it, but never really found anything that fit. And then all of a sudden I came across, it was two triplexes that was pretty close to where I lived that were going for sale. And it just kind of fell into place. I thought, man, this is a good opportunity for it. So I made him an offer, went through all the inspections and everything, and it was going well. And then, so I was really excited about it, right? I mean, I'm going from a duplex to now I'm going to have, 8 tenants. So it was pretty exciting at the time. And then all of a sudden at the last minute, the seller backed out for some reason. So it all fell through again. And so I was pretty frustrated. It's like, man, I've been kind of messing around with this and I can't seem to find anything. So that was over a couple year period. And towards the end of that time, I was really ready to do something different in my manufacturing job. I was either going to move to a different location or go down a different path. And so it just kind of came together. I started looking at different opportunities, and then I looked at, what about just doing this full time in real estate? And that's how I came across HomeVestors. Talked to some of the other franchisees at the time, and was really intrigued by it and thought it was something that I really wanted to do. So it's kind of a summary of how I got there. It was a pretty slow process, but in the end, it was good.
Okay, so that's 2013.
Yes, I started in. I went through the training with HomeVestors in May of 2013.
So when you were first looking at HomeVestors, what were the things that you were excited about, and what were the things that were concerning to you?
Well, I think the biggest concern for me was when I was looking in the Florence and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina market. And there's really no one in that market. So there wasn't anyone I could go talk to and see how that market was. So I talked to people in other markets across the country, really. But I guess what was really concerning for me was, how is that going to work in Myrtle Beach? Because there's no one really doing it in Florence. So that was one of my big concerns. And I thought, well, I'm going to start doing this. Is anyone really going to call me, because there's no current brand recognition there. It's really starting from nothing. So that was one of my big concerns at the time when I was going to start.
Okay. So again, when you and I started, it was just after the real estate crash had sort of clobbered a bunch of people. And like you, when I jumped into HomeVestors, I was the only guy in the market. And I found that to be a mixed bag because on the one hand, we didn't have the power of the brand and the sharing, but on the other hand, it's sort of fun to be the first person there and to put your flag in the ground and figure things out as you go. Did you have that same experience or something different?
No, I think it's it's just different. I think both ways have their advantages. If you're going into a more stable market, you have the advantage of the other franchisees' experience and what's been going on. But if you're going into a new market by yourself, and you're getting everything on your own. I mean, you're dealing with it on your own. There's a lot of activity because you're really the only one in the market. So like you said, I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to both ways. And you just have to be aware of what you're going to get depending on what you're using.
So you started in the Florence market, and
Mhm.
you identified that was such a small market, there might be a better opportunity. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I started in mainly Florence. Myrtle Beach was almost a 2-hour drive for me. So I did start there. I never did buy a house in that market, but mainly in the Florence area. And what I found was that it was such a small market. It was somewhat limited opportunities, and being new, it made it a little bit more difficult. So I talked to a guy. Ended up coming up and getting to know a guy that actually was a HomeVestors franchisee in the Columbia, South Carolina market for many years. And so I met him one day, and we talked about his experience when he was there. And I decided that I think it would be better for me to transfer to a bigger market. And, Florence is really small. Columbia is not even big, right? So it's all small in comparison, but, probably 4 times the size of Florence or so. So I
So
made that.
you live about how far outside of Columbia?
I live right in between Florence and Columbia, so I'm about 45 minutes from
Okay.
Columbia.
So you've been operating in Columbia since 2014,
Roughly, yeah.
about that 5-6 years. So
Mhm.
obviously you're still there. So you
Right.
figured something out,
Yeah.
and it's 40 minutes away. So do you go into Columbia every day or 3 days a week, or does it depend? How does that work?
Yeah, it's flexible. I don't go every day, so I set up days to where I can manage most of the stuff from home for 1 to 2 or 3 days a week. So depending on what's going on, I'll go into Columbia anywhere from 2 days to 4 days a week. It's pretty typical.
Okay. And so let's just make sure everyone understands your setup. So some people start with HomeVestors and they're the one-man band and they do everything on their own. And then some people grow and become a bigger operation. Some people have a modest operation. What does your operation look like?
So yeah, I started with just me, and ran the one man band for a few years. And I think it was 3 years ago my wife became an agent. Um, so now that helped a little bit because she deals with the listing of the properties and that side of it. So that was one thing that we've incorporated into our business. And then it's probably been 2 years now, I've hired a part-time coordinator that just helps with, you know, paperwork, documentation, just general office stuff. And she works from her home, and that's been a huge help. And at the same time, I've hired my second one. I had one for a while and she moved, and this one is in Columbia. So for example, if I need somebody to go meet, the appliance people or just somebody to go do something in town, then she does that for me as well. So it's helped out reduce the number of times I have to make that 40-minute drive.
Got it. Sounds good. So in the time you've been with HomeVestors, do you know how many houses you've bought?
I know I actually tracked. I was excited last year in the fall because I knew I was getting close to 100 houses. So I think October of 2019, I bought my 100th house.
Cool.
So I was just kind of excited about that. But yeah, so now I think I'm somewhere around 108 to 110, something like
Okay.
that.
So you broke the 100 mark. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
So let's talk about the disposition of it. Well, let's stay with the acquisition for a second. So you're the one who goes on the appointments
yes.
to buy houses. And then if they get under contract, then you get the help from your coordinator or your wife, depending on how you're going to dispose of the houses.
Correct.
So the general home investor model is that franchisees will sell some as a wholesaler assignment. Some will fix up and rehab them and sell them retail, and some will be rentals. Do you have one or two of those that you do, or do you do all of those avenues for your exit?
I actually do all of them. So I'll do some that I buy, fix up and resell as retail. We buy some and wholesale them. And then I do keep some as rentals. So yeah, I do a little bit of a mix of everything.
Okay, got it. So in a normal week, do you think you're working 1 hour a day, 5 hours a day, 10 hours a day? What kind of energy are you putting into it?
Yeah, I think that's, I probably put a lot more energy into it than I need to, just because it's my personality.
Right,
But I like the control, right? So that's my weakness. But
right.
I would say I probably put in, 8 to 10 hours a day.
Okay. So the point is you're treating this as a full-time job for you.
Yeah,
You're building it up. How many rentals do you have right now in your portfolio?
I have 20 doors right now.
20. Okay. Excellent. That's nice, especially at this time when we have all this uncertainty.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So if you're talking to somebody who's thinking about joining HomeVestors, what are some things that you would talk to that person regarding what they should be thinking about for joining or not?
Well, I think the important thing, one of the things I would say is it's important to know what you want. What are you looking to get out? I mean, this really is a business. It's not, um, you have to treat it like a business. And I think that's one of the important things. So when you're starting a business, you have to know, what do I want out of this business? I mean, do I want to buy 5 houses a year and have this, like a part-time gig and make a little bit of money at it? Do I want to do this full time and buy more houses because I'm going to work this, as a full-time job, let's say, or, even more, do I want to build this into a really large business where I have people working for me that are buying and have my own general contractor that's managing projects? I mean, you can really take it to whatever level you want. And all of those have, of course, their own advantages and disadvantages. And I think it's anytime someone calls me and says, I'm interested in doing it, one of the basic questions I ask them is, what do you really want to get out of it? What are you trying to be?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think if you can answer that question, then you can figure out how it fits into what you're trying to do.
So a lot of people are looking at it and they think, well, maybe I can be an investor on my own and I don't have to pay all the franchise fees. Or maybe I need to go the franchise route. And so when they're wrestling with that decision, can you talk about how you looked at what the values were that you saw from joining a franchise that balances out with what the costs are?
Yeah, I can. I think I think I can give a better answer to that by giving you two different scenarios. So first, I'll say back when I started in 2013, it's a different answer than if I'm going to answer now. When I started in 2013, I had really, other than rental property management, I had no real estate experience. So a lot of this was new to me. So just the basic training that HomeVestors provided was big to me, where if someone is already involved in real estate, it's probably not as important. So when I started not being in real estate, just that the basics were really important to me and really fundamental. Today, I'll answer it from my perspective today. Obviously, I feel pretty comfortable with the fundamentals now. Now, I think the big benefit is it's really three. I mean, you have HomeVestors being the national brand gives a lot of benefit with the recognition and the advertising that comes along with that. You have HomeVestors having the ability to provide financing. And again, that kicks in really heavy when you're first starting. So you have a place to go. You don't have to worry about where I'm going to get the money. And then, but quite honestly, the biggest benefit for me at this point in time is the network. It's 1,000 franchisees, and Adam, you and I have known each other since I started, and we talk frequently about different things we're seeing in our market. But at the same time, I found that I can randomly pick some guy in any city across the country that's a franchisee, send them an email or give them a call and say, hey, I have a question about, what are you doing with rental property financing? And they're happy to share that information. And so that's, for me today, that's the biggest benefit that I see from it, is just the ability that, you have this national franchise network, and everyone's really willing to help everyone out.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about the brand. When people are seeing you and you're talking about what the brand is, how do you think that helps you, or does it help you?
Well, I think it helps, and I think the main reason that helps is when you go in to see someone and you have somewhat of a national brand. I think it just helps with their confidence that you're really going to do what you say. You know, HomeVestors has bought, tens of thousands of houses. So I think just them knowing that, look, this isn't the first time you've ever bought a house. I think that just gives you, it gives the seller a little bit of confidence knowing that you're really going to buy it.
Right. So you said that your wife now has her license, but when you got started, you didn't have your license.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Was that was that difficult for you, or talk a little bit about having your license, not having your license?
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's difficult. Again, it was just part of the learning curve. I mean, I tried everything from for sale by owners because I wasn't an agent, and that works okay. It's a lot of extra work, but it does work. Um, I did. I tried flat fee agents, and then I started really using an agent. I had mentioned before there was a prior franchisee in the Columbia market, and we became pretty good friends, and just stayed in contact with each other as things were going. And so he was an agent. He was a broker for a company. And so he started listing some of my houses for me. And that was, I think, when I really started to see the benefit of having we'll call it a professional agent and not a flat fee listing.
Right.
There were a lot
So the fact that you're saying that you're listing them, that means that you're taking title to most of your properties. You're not just assigning them that much, are you? Or is that not true?
That is true. I do not assign very many properties at all. I mean, I probably assign one a year.
So your model is you take title to it, and then if you're just going to wholesale it, you just put it on MLS because you think you can make more money that way by exposing it to more people, or is there something else on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I think exposing it on MLS, and it also, it gives me, a few days to go in and clean it out. If there's something really, if there's something really ugly with the property, I mean, you can fix that. I mean, just try to make it a little bit more palatable and make it marketable to more people.
Yeah. So if you weren't an agent and you had to get comps for these properties before you made offers on them, how were you able to pull your comps?
Well, I've used Red Bell. It pulls comps. It's a subscription service that pulls comps from MLS pretty much nationwide.
So that's one of the things I think sometimes people forget about with HomeVestors is you can only access something like Red Bell if you're part of a franchise system. So people can join HomeVestors, not be an agent, and still be able to access MLS because of Red Bell.
Correct. Yes, I would use Red Bell, and to be quite honest, even though I have access to MLS, I still use Red Bell, just because the software, ease of use, I mean, just the whole package is, it's just really easy to use and easier to do comps than using the MLS system.
Right. Now let's jump over to another topic. So when you first started, you didn't come from a background of construction and being your dad a plumber or an electrician or anything like that. Same with me. So you really didn't have exposure to some of the terms and some of what the pricing should be for the repairs. So how did you figure out what the repairs should be for a house when you went to look at a house?
Yeah, it's intimidating at first if you don't have that background. But one of the tools that HomeVestors provides is a standard. It's an iPad app, and you can use that app. And the way I would use it is I would take notes while I'm in the house, and then when I would leave, I would go in and enter that information in the app, and it kind of walks you through. It does pricing for example, if the house needs a roof. It'll calculate those pricing for that based on, the square feet of the house. And you put in, I need a refrigerator or whatever. You can it helps you walk through that. And then it calculates how much those repairs are going to cost overall. So it's a little intimidating at first, but once you get used to using that software, it's pretty straightforward.
So you would just put in that it needs windows and it tells you how much it costs and all that kind of stuff.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
excellent. Do you still use it a lot, or have you gotten to the point now where you've grown from it and you've got a high comfort level, or where are you with that, with your comfort now that you've been doing this for a while?
I actually still use it because I've stopped using it for a little while, but what I found is that it really makes sure that I don't make any mistakes. So I still use it. It doesn't take very long. I just go in, enter the information. It calculates everything. I can do a quick gut check, and it helps with that process.
Okay, got it. So when you do something for a while, you've been doing it for 6 years. Sometimes you'll have good years, sometimes you'll have bad years. Have you had it where it's every year's been better than the last, or were there ups and downs because we have market that changes, or did your exit strategies change? Give a little bit of a history of how things are and where you are now, and how was 2019 for you?
Yeah, I've had ups and downs, and a lot of it has more to do with what I choose as my business. It seems really straightforward to say, but if I keep more properties as rentals, my profit for that year goes down. If I keep less properties for rentals, my profit for that year is going to go up. But you have to balance the short-term profit of buying and selling versus the long-term asset of keeping a rental property. So I think that is one of the things that you really have to, at least for me, if it was up to me, I'd have like 7 million rental properties, but it's a balance of keeping cash flow and keeping everything in line. So I've had ups and downs as far as profit, but on my low profit years, I kept more rentals. So
Makes
I'm
sense.
benefiting from that now.
Okay. So we've been looking backwards. Let's go forward for a second. So do you have any kind of vision of the next 5 years or 10 years, or any things that you want to do going forward that you think are worth talking about?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty content and happy with what, my current plan. I mean, I've been buying anywhere from 15 to 20 houses a year and maintain that for probably the last 4 years. I'd like to buy a few more houses. I mean, I'd really like to get to 24, but I don't have any desire to buy 100 a year. So my plan going forward is to get to between 20 and 24 houses a year. I'd really like to keep adding to the rental portfolio of 4 a year, and just keep building that.
Okay. So let's talk about funding for a second, because the world of real estate investing is cash heavy on it. And you had mentioned briefly, so one advantage for you for HomeVestors in the beginning, at least, is that they'll fund the deals you do. How are you funding things other than that? Do you self-fund, or do you have bank funding or other private lenders? Where do you cultivate and find this money?
Yeah, I think it's everyone said this when I started, and I thought it was crazy, but the more experience you get, the easier it is to find financing. So right now I do a combination of pretty much everything. I mean, I still use HomeVestors financing on some properties. I use some other hard money financing on properties. I self-fund on some properties. I try to avoid that most of the time, honestly, just because I think it's important to keep as much cash on hand as you can. I've found a private money lender that, is willing to fund pretty much anything I can find. So I guess to answer the question is I've done a little bit of all of that. And I think when I started, the private money guy wouldn't have, I mean, he honestly doesn't even look at the properties. If I tell him I have a property and I need $50,000, he just says, what day do you want it? He doesn't even look at it. He just trusts from my experience that it's going to be good. Obviously that wouldn't have happened 6 years ago when I first started, right? So a lot of those things evolve as you go.
Right. So you built this really strong reputation. You've been a consistent performer in the Columbia market, and that's why people are glad to give you money as as you need it just because they have total confidence in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had any difficult situations where things were tough and you had to have a hard conversation with your lender?
With the personal, with the guy that's doing the funding for me, honestly, no. It's been, I do try. I mean, I try to make that relationship very much win-win for both of us. So we usually work together on fairly low risk. We always do the wholesale side. So we're going to buy the property, we're going to clean it out, maybe fix a roof or something like that and sell it. So my goal is, he doesn't have his money invested for more than 3 to 4 months total. So they've all been really easy. You know, they've all been wholesales. He doesn't finance, or I've never asked him to finance, a very large rehab. I don't want to have that conversation. So I'm just trying to make it easy.
Yeah.
Wholesale.
I mentioned that now because we're right in the middle of COVID and there's so much uncertainty in the market. Have you stopped buying houses, or are you still just business as usual? You're buying anything that makes sense?
Well, I wouldn't say business as usual. I have not stopped buying. I'm still buying. Um, I am just being a lot more cautious of what I'm buying. I really don't want to buy really at either extreme of the market. I don't want to buy at the high end properties at the moment, and I don't want to buy low end properties. I want to buy pretty much, right at the median of the market, and try to stick to that price point. And so I've changed that a little bit in the past. I bought a house for $5,000, and I bought high end houses where, as of today, I'm being a little bit more cautious and just really buying in the median of the market.
Okay, let's see. So let's go back to the part about the cash intense business. So you can get money on the loans. You're spending money to advertise to buy houses, and you're spending money on rehabs. Talk a little bit more about how you watch your cash flow, and is that something that keeps you up at night, or is that something that you have a really good handle on?
Well, in the past, it kept me up at night. And so that's why I learned about it. And maybe I learned the hard way, but when I first started, I would fund a lot more with cash, and trying to save the money from paying a lender. And what I found, it was in this business, it's not cyclical, but it's lumpy. So, I'll buy 3 or 4 houses in 1 month and then go 2 months and not buy a house. Well, the sales are coming that same way. So it's really easy to get into a spot if you're trying to buy stuff with cash. It's easy to get into a spot where maybe you have to sell something, whether you plan to rehab it and you can't, you just need to sell it because you need to get the cash. It's easy to get in those positions. So I think managing your cash, and you can't manage it on a month to month. It really needs to be on, a 3-month period. You really just have to make sure that you're looking out for the next 3 months. This is what I expect my expenses are going to be, and just be prepared, because, who knows when a closing's supposed to happen today, and you think you're going to sell that house, and for some reason it gets pushed out a week, or, it even gets canceled. Those are just things that happen.
Got it. So how do you keep track of all your leads? You've got all these leads over time, and not everybody is going to go ahead and say yes and buy the or sell the house the day you meet them. How do you keep track of all that stuff?
Yeah, so that's a pretty big process. So we get a lot of leads coming in, and it's really easy to get wrapped up in that. But when we first started, I was just trying to do it, using an Excel database, and probably, excuse me, some of my engineering training in the background kicking in, but it very quickly was unmanageable. So now part of HomeVestors provides some software, and part of that software is a CRM system that helps manage those leads. It keeps track of them. It tracks it as you're going through the process, and if you've talked to them and you need to reach out to them again, if you've already made them an offer. I mean, it just helps walk each individual lead through the process to make sure you just don't forget about someone. So another advantage of the franchise.
And so because you'd never been a house buyer really before, it's sort of intimidating the first time you go into someone's house to try to figure this all out. There's all these things to think about, the seller situation and what the house is worth. How did you have a system so you knew how to go on that appointment?
So again, when that was one of the things that when we went through the initial training with HomeVestors, that was really helpful to me because I had no experience with that. There was a flow chart, and it just, at that time it was actually a flip chart. I think it's electronic now, but you just went page by page, and it just kind of helped you know what questions to ask and know what information to get from the seller.
And what about Sandler training? That's something that HomeVestors really drinks Kool-Aid about. Have you gone to Sandler training for that?
Yeah, I've been 4 times. So I think I waited about 2 or 3 years before the first time I went. And then since then I've been every year except one, I think. So it's amazing. I mean, that's in my mind, that is a game changer and is one of the best things to do. It really helps.
Yeah, that's a secret sauce. When I started, I wasn't doing very well until I went to it, and I was skeptical about going to a sales training class. And when I went there, what was interesting was half of the attendees were repeat attendees, and that's what spoke so loudly to me about that course. That was really a critical deal for me, feeling comfortable doing this whole process.
Right. I mean, when you go to one, yeah, there's a huge number of people that have never, or that are repeating it again. And I've gone, every time I go, I pick up something different. And so I think just that reinforcement is worth the time to go. It's a very powerful tool.
Okay. So there's sort of two groups of people who join HomeVestors. You're going to have people like you and me who were from another world, not in real estate investing, and we were interested in getting something that was sort of in a box kind of program to teach us about real estate. And then there's people who are already real estate investors, and they'll join, and usually what we hear about is that they're joining because they were dissatisfied with their ability to find leads or to buy houses at a deep enough discount. So some people don't really know how HomeVestors works in terms of the marketing and the leads. So talk a little bit about that. Are you licking your own stamps? Are you the one figuring out where to send mailers? Are you doing mailers? Or how are you even finding prospects and houses? Are you buying them off of auction? Just talk a little bit about that, please.
Sure. So yeah, HomeVestors has an advertising agency that works with them. And what that allows us to do is basically they're nationwide. They track this market and this, this segment across the country. And then they look at what's going on locally and they make recommendations for what we should do in our local market. So I don't do any of that. It's one of the benefits. I don't have to worry about them. I give them what my goals are, and then they give me recommendations on how we should spend the advertising dollars for that month. And, we can discuss it. It comes down to each franchise or each ad council is really up to them what they decide to do. But 90% of the time I follow their recommendations. I mean, they're doing this stuff, every day nationwide, and it's been really good, the amount of leads I've gotten.
Okay, great. Well, let's just review what we've covered here. So we've gone through your path and your org structure, and we've talked about how it works with generating leads and follow-up systems and the brand and how you exit properties. It's a full business you got running there, and you've got a staff where you're not doing everything on your own, but you're nimble enough that if we're having a tricky time in a market, you can quickly adjust to what's happening here. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, that again, it goes back to every individual person has to decide what level of business they want. And I want to stay small enough to where I do have flexibility.
Okay. And you've built enough of a reputation that there's people who want to give you money, and just essentially off of your word, they'll give you $50 or $60 or $70,000, and that's the kind of a reputation you've built for yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I mean, again, when I first started, other investors, inside and outside of HomeVestors were saying, private money will come to you. You just have to make sure that you're doing the right thing, and it'll just be a matter of time. And then all of a sudden, it just happens. I mean, people come up to you and say, "Hey, I want to partner with you. I can provide the financing," or you
Right.
just as you build that reputation for what you do, you find all kinds of different people that know, and it makes it a lot easier.
Right. Now you have kids, and you spend quite a bit of time with them, or you probably too much now with COVID, with everyone in the same house. But
I
in
think
a
so.
normal world, you really wanted to sort of divide some time out and focus on your kids too. Talk about how you were able to balance that.
Right. I mean, in the past, with before HomeVestors, with me working as a manufacturing manager for many years, that's pretty time away from home intense. I mean, I worked a lot, so I wasn't at home a lot. I've always worked for really good companies, so it was always flexible. If I needed to do something, of course, it was never that I couldn't do it. But one of the big advantages I have now is that really no one sets my schedule except for me. So if there's, my kids are in baseball and, band and golf and, you know, who knows what else by the time they get to graduate from high school. And so what this does is it gives me the ability that if I want to take off, 3 or 4 hours in the middle of a Tuesday because they're doing something, in the afternoon, I just put that in my schedule, and my coordinator is tied in with my schedule. She doesn't schedule anything for me to do, and it allows me to do that. So yeah, it's personally one of the biggest benefits of doing this is just the ability to schedule my life around, or really schedule work around my life. I mean, it just gives me that opportunity to be flexible.
Great. Greg, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think we should touch on?
I can't think of anything. I think as someone that's wanting to start it again, I'll go back and highlight I think the most important thing I tell people when they talk to me about this is know what you want. And if you know what you want out of the business and you know what the business can look like, then you can, from a franchise standpoint, there is someone in HomeVestors that's probably doing what you want. You can find out who those people are, and my experience has been they're always willing to take the time and share you some pointers.
Okay. Greg, I really appreciate you spending the time. I really enjoyed hearing the story.
Yeah, it's good to talk.
And yeah, good talking with you, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks. You too.